Hi everybody and welcome to Heel Heat. My name is George Coles, and on this episode, we're continuing our Revolutionaries series. And if you haven't seen this series before, this is where we take a wrestler from history and what makes them so revolutionary, what makes them so integral to the sport, how they affected and changed pro wrestling, most of the time for the better. With that being said, the wrestler that we're going to cover this week is Mitsuharu Misawa. Now, you may or may not be familiar with that name if you don't watch Japanese wrestling or you weren't a tape trader in the 90s or early 2000s. You may have heard the name and not ever seen any of his matches. This is one of the reasons why I want to do these. Much like the one I did last week with the Amazing Red, I want to shine the light on, in my opinion, at least for the United States fan in this case, wrestlers that made a profound impact that you may not know made that impact. Now, you may have known the wrestler, like the case with the Outsiders we did a couple weeks ago, very famous tag team, but we talked about what made them special and how they were revolutionary. For this, we're covering what a lot of wrestling critics and a lot of wrestling historians consider one of the greatest wrestlers not only of his generation, but of all time. You'd be very hard-pressed to find anybody that would argue with you if you put Misawa in your top 4, your top 2, your top 1. If you said he was on your Mount Rushmore, a lot of wrestling fans would agree. With that being said, we're going to talk about what made Misawa revolutionary. The first thing we're going to talk about, elevating the All Japan Kings Road style. And if you're not familiar with it, it is a style of wrestling that kind of, you had to build your way to a championship or build your way to being a contender, where everything got ramped up and got ramped up and got ramped up. It's kind of like what they were doing with Roman Reigns to an extent. And for this, it's not just Misawa. There are 4 people, actually 5 in my opinion, but there are 4 people that are considered the 4 pillars of heaven in All Japan Pro Wrestling in the 1990s. Mitsuharu Misawa, Toshiaki Kawada, Akira Taue, and Kenta Kobashi. I add Jun Akiyama to that group. He wasn't ever considered one of the 4 pillars, but he was right there with them, and some of their more highly rated matches, some of their more memorable matches, Akiyama's right there in the mix, whether it be in solos, tag teams, whatever it may be. These 5 wrestlers, in my opinion, took that Kings Road style and made it the preeminent style of the 1990s. It made All Japan Pro Wrestling the top Japanese promotion of that decade. You had other people in like Dr. Death Steve Williams, Big Van Vader, other wrestlers like Terry Gordy, or Tenryu even in that mix. And you got some of the best wrestlers, some of the most highly regarded of all time. And these guys put on this hard-hitting, quote-unquote dangerous, devastating-looking, almost to the point of being more violent than a death match in just the in-ring violence that they were doing. Everything elevated, all the moves elevated, it got more and more dangerous, more drops on the head, more drops on the back of the neck, moves like the Tiger Driver, the Burning Hammer, all these crazy moves came out of this. Dr. Death's Backdrop Driver, and this whole thing, it was like an arms race. Who could get better and who could do something even more crazy? It was just insane, and if you go back and you watch these matches, they still hold up to this day. For that, for elevating the art of pro wrestling, I have to give that as one of the reasons why he's a revolutionary. Now, the second reason is kind of one that I know a lot of people have touched on but haven't really gone deep into it, and that's him breaking tradition. If you're not familiar, Mitsuharu Misawa was the second Tiger Mask. After Sayama gave up the mask, he took it over. Well, if you've seen a Tiger Mask match, especially when the first and second, they were very high flying, very hard on your knees, and Misawa was starting to have some knee issues. He wanted to slow it down. He wanted to do more of a grounded approach to his ring style. He also wanted to move into the heavyweight division and out of the junior division. Now, what predicated that, and this is where it gets a little muddy, as far as I know, he did this on his own accord. There have been some people who said that they knew what he was going to do, but more people have said that this was something he did on his own, and it just happened to work, and if it wouldn't have worked, he probably would have got fired. He broke kind of an unwritten tradition in a match where he was teamed up with the aforementioned Kawada, going up against Samson Fuyaki and Yoshiaki Yatsu. In the match, he asks Kawada to help him take off the tiger mask. And when he does, in a normally reserved Japanese crowd, you hear them go crazy for Misawa, which they seen before he wore the mask. They knew of him from his earlier run. In a country that's so steep in tradition, in a sport in that part of the world that's so steeped in tradition, doing something that's not what was written or part of what was talked about, and doing something so crazy as taking off your mask, it just wasn't done. And it just went to show you how, when Misawa bet on himself, it was always going to be a winning bet. This, in my opinion, would be the equivalent of the NWO forming in the 1970s with Bruno Sammartino becoming a member. That's how crazy it would be. I don't think it quite gets as much coverage as it should, because I don't think the nuance carries around the world of the importance it had in Japan. That's just my opinion. Now, my third and final reason for him being a revolutionary kind of ties in with reason 1 and reason 2. This is another time where he defied tradition. This is another time where he elevated the sport and elevated the in-ring style. After the passing of Giant Baba in All Japan Pro Wrestling, there was a bit of a power struggle, mostly between Baba's widow, Moriyoko Baba, which I'll call Mrs. Baba from here out because I don't know that I'm pronouncing her name right. I'd never actually heard her name other than Mrs. Baba. I digress. And Misawa. Misawa was supposed to be the person that took over the company and drove it into the future. And there was kind of back and forth, and we won't go into that because there's a million different videos. I'm pretty sure Kim Justice had did a long deep dive into that, which I highly recommend checking out Kim Justice's stuff, because if you're not familiar with Japanese pro wrestling, they cover it so well and they give such great deep dives and such fantastic stories that add to it. Even for someone like myself that knows a decent amount of this, there's just so much care and so much effort put into that, and it makes you revere these people so much more just watching their videos. So go check out Kim Justice, give them a sub, they definitely deserve it. I've cross-referenced their videos several times. Anytime I talk about a historic Japanese wrestler, I go to their videos to see if they've made something, just so I make sure I'm not getting my facts wrong. Now, with that being said, the struggle led into early 2000, Misawa leaving All Japan Pro Wrestling. Now, you might say that doesn't sound like it's that important of a deal. I'll get there in a moment. At the time, All Japan Pro Wrestling was either considered the biggest company in the country or the second biggest behind New Japan. They were right there fighting it back and forth. I would say for most of the 90s, All Japan was a little bit above New Japan, but I digress. Me personally, I was more of a fan of the New Japan style. I liked watching more of Muda matches and Chono matches than I did the Four Pillars. Not saying that the Four Pillars matches weren't great, just my preference. Anyway, just him leaving himself doesn't give you that much of an idea of how important this was. When he left, he took 24 out of the 26 contracted wrestlers with All Japan Pro Wrestling with him. Now let that sink in for him. Out of the 26 wrestlers that they cared enough to put under contract, and there are freelancers that are top of the card guys there that don't necessarily work for any company, 24 of the top people left. This would be the equivalent of, let's say, going to WWE one night and Seth Rollins, CM Punk, Drew McIntyre, Roman Reigns, Randy Orton, Cody Rhodes, Sami Zayn, Kevin Owens, AJ Styles, and so on and so forth, decided to leave and start their own company. They had to vacate every single title they had. Every champion left. And where they went was Pro Wrestling Noah, which you may have heard of or you may know. I'm just going to give you some of the last names of these guys that left with him. Kanemaru, who you might know now, he's still wrestling in New Japan. One of the best cruiserweights of all time, or lightweights of all time, or junior heavyweights, whatever you want to call it. Marufuji, one of the big stars of Noah. If you know Noah, you know Marufuji. Momota, which surprisingly was one of the people he was clashing with in All Japan, but I guess he saw the vision. Another one. Kobayashi, one of the Four Pillars of Heaven that we talked about earlier. Also, another one of the greatest wrestlers of all time. If you ask people to do a top 10, he might make into their top 10. Kimura, Takayama, Ogawa, Tawa, another one of the Four Pillars of Heaven. The only pillar that didn't go was Kawada, because Kawada was heavily involved in the booking. In All Japan, he did eventually come and do matches with Noah, and even the aforementioned Jun Akiyama that we talked about earlier. So just think of those names. You may not know all those names, you may not be familiar with them, especially if you're not up on your Japanese pro wrestling history, but I guarantee you've heard a couple of them. I guarantee you've heard of Kawada. I guarantee you've heard of Marufuji. I know you've heard of Kimura, because you know the Kimura lock. I'm just saying, he basically took and made his own company, did his own style, and for a very long period of time, Pro Wrestling Noah was the number 2 company in Japan behind New Japan. And I think, honestly, All Japan Pro Wrestling never has really recovered for that. They've had some great wrestlers, they've had some great matches over the years. They built themselves back up to where they are the number 2 company in the country again, but it's kind of like their number 2 is the equivalent of when WWE was number 1 and TNA was the only other thing running. And we're just talking about the men's side, because once we get into the women's, that's a whole nother deal. But just the fact that he took that, made this other lane, made Pro Wrestling Noah, which to this day is still going and still having high level, high quality matches. The ring style in Noah, I would say, is, if we look promotion for promotion, even in Japan, even if we look at the other Japanese promotions there, the Noah style is the heavy predominant style that has taken over Japan. And in some cases, it's the style that's bled over into America the most. It's what mostly you see in the AEW quote-unquote strong style hybrid. Strong style, especially what it is now, has a lot of King's Road in it. I just mentioned earlier how the Bloodline matches would seem to have a little bit of that King's Road style to it. It took a lot. Now, there wasn't the interference and all that. That's a whole different thing. But there was that. You had to do everything. You had to basically give everything you got to get a win. For that, for the evolution of the art, for creating basically a new way that wrestling is presented, for pushing wrestlers like Kenta, like Marufuji, and putting them into main roles, for leaving it all in the ring, and quite literally, he left it all in the ring. Misawa passed away in the ring, if you're not familiar. For all of the influence he made in pro wrestling, I gotta say it, Misawa not only is one of the revolutionaries in pro wrestling history, he's probably one of the more important revolutionaries in pro wrestling history, and easily one of the top 10 wrestlers of all time. Just a guy I have the utmost respect for. If you're not familiar with him, please look him up. Please, like I said, go watch Kim Justice's video on Misawa. I think he has several, but go watch him. They're going to give you way more of a deep dive into Misawa than I have here. There's definitely Misawa matches on YouTube that could be found and could be searched out. Go watch those as well. I guarantee you're going to find something you like. With all that being said, I'm going to keep saying this because this is only the 4th video in this style that we're doing. If you like this kind and you'd like to see me keep going, let me know in the comments. Hit the like, share the video, all that stuff. They seem to be doing relatively well, and I thank you guys for that. It shows me that you guys do like my idea. But let me know down here. Let me know if you want to see it keep going. I have a bunch of other wrestlers that are ready to go, and I'm ready to make whole videos on them, but I digress. With all that being said, my name is George Coles, and you've been watching Heel Heat.